This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host Ivan, and each week I'll be chatting with some amazing hikers from across the United States and abroad. Spring has finally arrived in the Pacific Northwest, and soon I'll be hitting the trails to record short-form episodes with hikers I meet along the way. Look out for those episodes to drop sometime in June for Season 3. In the meantime, we'll be asking some of your favorite hikers about their experiences and adventures. We always finish the episode off with a round of this or that questions all related to hiking. We have an exciting guest on today's episode. His name is Juan Pablo, and he's also known as JP, and you can follow his adventures on Instagram at pct.data. I had such a fun time chatting with Juan Pablo on this episode. He has a great Instagram feed where he shares PCT and hiking related data collected through various sources. After recently reintroducing himself into hiking and backpacking, we talk about some of his favorite hikes in and around Portland, how he collects and compiles his various data sources, and what he's learned along the way. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Juan Pablo. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm really excited today to have this person on the podcast. His name is JP. He is doing something really unique that caught my eye, and I'm really excited to talk about the content that he's posting online. JP, thank you for coming on the podcast. You know, we always like to start off with each guest to learn a little bit about them and how they got started hiking. How long would you say that you've been hiking for, and how did you get started?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I've been really excited for this conversation and just have been so surprised with the feedback I've been getting from starting this. And, you know, it's people like you and compliments that I get that really just keep me going. But so I've been seriously hiking, I would say, since November of this last year. Now, that sounds pretty recent, but I use the term seriously because, you know, ever since this last November, so 2022, I've been really just focused on getting better at hiking and backpacking in general. That's kind of where this whole thing started, is I just really wanted to get very in-depth about my knowledge in this field. But, you know, ever since I moved back to the West Coast a couple of years ago, you know, I kind of just got a re-interest in hiking and just reconnecting with nature. So I'd say 2 years of casual hiking, and then probably, I guess, like 4 months of very serious and kind of dedicated hiking.
You've chosen a great place to be your launching pad because you're currently based out of Portland, Oregon, which I feel like Seattle has great opportunities in Washington, but I feel like Portland, you can go to the gorge, you can go to Bend, you can go up to Mount St. Helens, even Rainier's not too far away, or even the coast.
Right, yeah.
How would you describe the hiking scene that you've been introduced there in Portland?
Well, I'm spoiled, like plain and simple. I can go an hour or less in any direction and just be in just breathtaking, you know, woods or wilderness. You know, like one of my favorites, for example, is like if you go to, you know, just to the Salmon River Trail here in Mount Hood, you know, you can be in the Salmon Huckleberry Wilderness, you know, within like an hour's drive of Portland. So like being able to get just that that authentic experience so quickly is, again, it's spoiling, and not to mention there's also, these amazing city parks, like Forest Park, for example. It's just like, I think there's like a 40-mile trail that goes through Forest Park, which
Oh,
is,
wow.
yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's just a city, it's like an urban forest. So, I mean, that's like 20 minutes from my house, and I can just kind of go and, escape for a little bit after work, or even the gorge, right? There's some, major trails, along the gorge that are just 30 minutes or so outside of the city, where you can go see waterfalls and get some serious incline and really work your legs. It's honestly, it's like a hiker's paradise, I would say.
Definitely, I would agree. And I always like the gorge because one of the first places in the Pacific Northwest that gets its spring flower blooms, Mount Rainier and some of the alpine lakes, they get them, but later on in the season once the snow melted off. We're recording this episode. It's the second week of spring. Do you have any springtime hikes that you're looking forward to doing this upcoming season?
I'm excited to go on pretty much any hike I'm going on here. We've been having this crazy weather here. There's been a lot of snow all over the place, and it's been making it a little bit more challenging to get out. So honestly, any hike I can get in is just appreciated at this time. But that's not to say I'm not excited for some wildflower hikes. I have honestly never experienced that kind of hike before, and my wife and I are just so excited to get out there and explore that. I mean, just seeing from pictures and just from what my friends tell me about these hikes, it's just something we have to do, and we're really going to get into this spring. Do you have any recommendations or tips for some of these gorge wildflower hikes?
Definitely. So the most popular one in the gorge, especially the closer you are to Portland and Vancouver, is Dog Mountain.
Okay.
It's definitely a workout, but it is just gorgeous once the flowers are in bloom. But
okay.
I actually have a place that's a little bit dear to my heart because I don't have to drive as deep into the gorge to reach it, but it's the Columbia Hills Preserve right outside of Goldendale, next to the Maryhill Museum. That one, it's not as populated or as well known as like Dog Mountain or some of the other gorge hikes, but some of the colors that you get on those hillsides are just spectacular. So if you're willing to drive the extra, I think it's an extra hour and a half from Portland, you get less crowds and you just get, bigger fields of flowers with less of an incline.
I will drive. That sounds good. That sounds great to me.
And JP, we've already kind of discussed Portland being a great central home base to kind of go in either direction. But do you have a favorite hike in any of the close regions to Portland that you've been able to experience since you started this journey of hiking?
Yeah, it's so hard to pin that down because it really just depends on, it's like mood and obviously weather and stuff. But I would say one of my favorites is the Salmon River Trail. I know I kind of mentioned it earlier. I just think for me, it's a perfect hike because it just has such a steady elevation kind of the whole way, and you're hugging the river the whole time. And I really like to just hike near water. It's just pleasing. For me, that's just such an awesome hike, and especially when you're lower, when you're kind of like starting out and you're closer to the river. I mean, some of those trees are just massive, and it's just, no matter how many times I see them, it impresses me, like I've tried to take pictures of them to try and capture the magnitude of these things. And I just haven't been able to find a way to do that, by giving it its proper justice. That's easily one of my favorites. That's just one where I can go and just turn my mind off and just let that trail take care of me.
And how far away is that from Portland?
It's about an hour's drive. So if going out of 26, so heading towards Mount Hood, it's about an hour to the trailhead. Okay. So it's real easy. There's a lot of, nice. There's actually a great food cart pod on the way out in Sandy where you can get a killer breakfast burrito before. So that's pretty much a pre-hike ritual every time I go out there. I grab a breakfast burrito and hit the trail.
How about in the opposite direction? Have you had a chance to go, I think it's Highway 26 that leads you to the coast. Is that right?
Yeah, either way, exactly. You can go east on it, you go to Mount Hood, or west and you get to the coast. So pretty spoiled on that front. But, I would say Cape Falcon is one of my favorites over there, very close by as well. It's about an hour and a half from the city. And it's a great hike. I feel like for somebody, if you're bringing somebody who is maybe getting into it or, is kind of a casual hiker, I feel like it's a perfect hike for that because it's just got these like crazy, these stunning views of the ocean. There, you'll be hiking along and you'll kind of be hugging these, these steep cliffs and looking at the Pacific. And then all of a sudden it just kind of bends back into the old growth forest, and you start, you kind of lose the sound of the ocean, and all of a sudden like stream will start trickling, and it's just like such a nice contrast in one hike. The elevation isn't too crazy, and also the end is pretty sick. I mean, it's like the one and only time I've ever seen a whale in the flesh, right? At the end of Cape Falcon, there's Cape Falcon, which is what the trail's named after. And you can just have these, sweeping views of the Pacific. And it's pretty awesome.
Wow. And is that south of Cannon Beach?
It is. Yeah. It's about 15 minutes south. Yeah. So you're driving south on 101.
Okay. I'll have to add that to the list.
Yeah. Even just the drive out there is pretty, so I'm a Star Wars fan. So it kind of feels like, when you're entering Oswald West State Park, which is where the trail is, it looks like Endor. Yeah, it looks like, where the Ewoks live, right? So that's pretty fun. I like to, I'm a, like I said, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, like I'm super into those kind of things. So I feel like those type of hikes with all that old growth and all that really like bring me to those, to those kind of places of fiction.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Especially on the coast, because it gets some of that moss, that super vibrant moss on some of the trees and vegetation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, even as a kid, I'm going to say, I was forced, right? Quote, forced as a kid to go hiking, just because it was something I didn't want to do, but it was just something my family introduced me, to at a young age. But, at the time I just wanted to, like play World of Warcraft and, do kid stuff, I guess. Right. But every time I would go out and, and go hiking, I would be looking for sticks, like to, either like, oh, I could turn this into a bow or something, like Legolas or whatever. So like, that's always just kind of been some way that I connect with nature and just kind of keep it light and fun as it's, supposed to be.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing is just having fun in the outdoors.
Yeah.
And so I got to ask, especially me being in Washington, is there a hike that you've enjoyed crossing the river over into Washington State?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I haven't spent all that much time hiking in Washington yet. And I feel like that's just because we've been spending most of our time in Oregon. Just there's already so much to explore on this side. But my wife and I went camping, what was that, October? And we went to Naked Falls over on the Washington side. This place was insane. It was I'm not sure if you're familiar with the spot. It's a watering hole, right? Where it's just these rolling waterfalls that create these like little deep pools of clear, like crystal clear blue water. You can basically bring your stuff out there, find one of these little personal pools and just hang out there all day. So I guess the opposite of hiking, right? But it's that's been like my favorite outdoors experience in Washington so far. It's just such a unique place. And it's only like 30 minutes from the city. It's a no-brainer summer activity.
You've really gotten a chance to go out and do a little bit of everything.
It's hard not to. It's so, especially in the summer, it's so inviting. I mean, it's such a unique place. It's why I don't want to really leave here. It's just it's such an amazing place to do outdoor anything, really, whether it's hiking or biking or just sitting out and having a beer outside. It's just like such a great place.
Especially with all the breweries, both in Portland and Washington.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And talking about breweries, I think a lot of people, when they hear about the Pacific Northwest, the initial reaction or the initial visualization is evergreen forests that are just lush green, maybe a little rain here and there. But I think you've gotten a chance to go east of Portland and you've probably seen the big change in scenery where, you still have some pine trees and then slowly starts becoming into a desert. And, I think Bend, Oregon is only about 3 hours from Portland. So, within a really short drive. Have you had a chance to explore the eastern side of Oregon?
I have. So my first exposure to Eastern Oregon came to a complete shock to me, honestly. Like I'd read, before moving over here about how different the eastern side was compared to, to the area west of the Cascades. So backing up, right? So before living here, my wife and I lived in DC. And so we decided to drive our stuff across and move ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so, we came into Oregon, obviously from the east, on 84. And it looked like just like cowboy country, like that's the only way I can describe it. Like it was such a shock for me. There was points along the drive where I felt like I was driving down to LA or something from, like on 5, like in the, Central California and stuff. It's just such a variance. And and it changes so fast. Is it the Umatilla? Umatilla is the first kind of like national forest you hit coming in from the east. And it was just like, oh, there's some trees now. It's where these come from. And then actually just even this past weekend, I went on my, I'll call it my first non-government sanctioned backpacking trip over in Eastern Oregon, just because that's where the weather was good. And we went out to the John Day River and just had an amazing little hike and amazing time out there. And it's such a different landscape, and it was just really cool to be able to get out and do that. And as far as Bend, I haven't spent much time hiking in Bend, if any, but I've definitely gone down there and want to go back because it's such an awesome little town.
Yeah.
We've definitely done some trips down, some weekend trips down there. But, the only real outdoor stuff I've done down there is just some snowboarding over Mount Bachelor, which is, super fun, right? But I haven't done much hiking, but it's absolutely on the list this year. I want to check out like Three Sisters Wilderness down there and just all the lakes. From what I understand, there's just a bunch of little crystal blue, lakes down there to explore. So definitely on the list.
That's really great that you've gotten a chance to see, all different types of landscapes here in the Pacific Northwest. And I think that's what really attracts people here is, you come here for the mountains, the Cascades and the forest, but there's so much more to see if you go within, 2 hours of a city.
Yeah, it's just, it kind of keeps you entertained. It keeps you wanting more.
We've kind of teased this at the beginning, but you're doing something really unique and exciting on your Instagram. You're compiling data and creating some great visuals that are related not just to hiking, but the outdoors as well. Can you share a little bit about the idea and how it kind of came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is really just the catalyst of just a chain of events that took place in my life. So, my background, right? So after high school, I joined the Army, right? And I spent 6 years in the military. I got to see Oklahoma, right, for my boot camp. And I got to spend some time in Arizona, which was kind of actually similar to that John Day hike I just went on, which was a nice little reminder of how far I've come. And, I spent some time in Germany as well. So I actually got to go down to the Alps and not really do some hiking, but just got to see that and see the magnitude of that range. So, I've been exposed to these really, unique situations. But anyways, what I was kind of going at was I spent my time in the Army as a something called an all-source intelligence analyst, which is in simple terms, it's basically somebody who answers questions for their boss, right? So I've always just had a background in research and question answering. One of the things that came about my time in the military was the use of numerical data to help my job, to help my estimates and help my assessments become more accurate. So I kind of remembered that about the military and was interested about it, but I never really pursued it at that point, right? So once I got out of the military, though, I got a job in DC, and I really just had a hard time adjusting to this new kind of change of pace for me. So the particular job that I was working at had very demanding hours. Like I'm talking 12-hour shifts, switching from night and day shifts every month, and it didn't feel good, to say the least. And it motivated me to go back to school. So I completed my master's degree out of American University in DC in data science, and the biggest motivation for that was, I just wanted to get better at applying my knowledge towards things I actually enjoy, right? And data science is a great tool for people to do that. It's such there's so many skills that apply to so many different things that it just seemed like a natural transition for me to take this passion for the outdoors that I have and apply my way of being creative to it. To me, I feel like it's the way that I can contribute to this community that's already given me so much in this short amount of time in the best way that I can. The idea of the data was to help me learn, right? I have this background in data analysis and all these different data functions where I figured, I could probably use that. I could probably use those skills somehow and to my advantage. And, I decided to use that as almost to build my confidence, right? So I wanted to rely on the research of others and the numbers to help me feel more confident in what I was learning, and in turn pass that on to other people in a way that, I think is a little different. And it provides, the scientific findings to people who may not typically access these different sources. And I honestly, I have fun with it. It just helps. Like I said, it helped me really just absorb lessons I learned and also learn from the community. So it's just kind of been this culmination culmination of different ideas and different things I've been trying. I've just been having a lot of fun with it so far.
Yeah, I could definitely tell that you're enjoying what you're doing and what you're putting out. And
yeah, thanks.
With the data collection, is that something that you're gathering online, but then also you're gathering yourself?
So I do both, right? So I gather, I went to school for a long time, and I understand how annoying it can be to read some of these scientific papers and how inaccessible they can be. And really, a lot of the times, you read through these things and there's really just a couple key points you need to take away from it. So that's one of my data sources, right? Is just these research papers that people have been doing, on, whether it be the outdoors or backpacking, and so forth. So that's definitely one of my major, sources. But, recently I've been kind of experimenting with, increasing the number of surveys that I'm providing, my followers. So recently, right, I was hiking around and in my mind, I was thinking about my backpack, and I was like, oh, maybe I should start wearing my chest strap, the little strap that goes across the little sternum strap that goes across your chest. And I'd been reading about it and heard that, it can help you with your shoulder pain and, just stabilize the load better. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to see how many other people felt the same way and how many people actually, use those things. I've heard it's like a pretty subjective issue. Like some people do, some people don't. And, I wanted to, use basically like the knowledge I have as a working data scientist is, I have a good understanding of how to set up data projects and experiments. And so I figured that I can, just ask people via survey, what do they prefer, right? And then base my decisions, right, with a little bit more evidence, right? So it turned out that most people do use a chest strap, and I agree with them. I like to use my chest strap, and it just feels good knowing that, some people do. But at the same time, I don't want to discount people that do it another way. Like I think as long as you're being safe, there's no real bad way to do it. There's no bad way to do it. It's just kind of, whatever you like. But for me personally, it helps me get a better understanding of this hiking and backpacking world by reaching out and kind of just sharing that information with folks.
I feel like some of the data points that you're presenting are conversations that hikers are having, or, they have those thoughts about, oh, I wonder how many people are doing this versus this. And I think what you're presenting is a lot of answers or data that people have been asking themselves, but might not necessarily know where to get that type of data.
Thank you. Yeah. And I like to say they're kind of like estimations, right? Like I put out this survey, right? And I got, 35 responses or something like that. So that's not enough to make a solid conclusion as to more people like chest straps or not, right? But for me, that doesn't matter all that much, right? Because that's not necessarily why I'm doing it. I'm not trying to prove a point. I'm just trying to use basically my background in data to help me better understand this world, so I'm not trying to, disprove anybody or do anything like that. I'm just trying to, again, just navigate this hiking and backpacking world through data. And like you said, is trying to, other people have these thoughts and questions. And, I feel like it's important to get those, actually get those questions answered, not only just doing them and getting an idea of what people feel, right? But also connecting it back to my experience, right? Because at the end of the day, this started, as a tool for me to learn about this, right? And I'm really happy that people are enjoying the ride that it is. But at the end of the day, PCT data is something that, I created for my wife and I to learn best practices and be confident out there in the wilderness.
The other two posts that really caught my attention, and one of them was in regards, or I guess both of them were in regards to the PCT. I feel like the PCT sometimes is considered like almost like a solo experience. I think you meet friends and build these relationships along on the trail, but it tends to be, or at least what you see online, it's a lot of solo hikers. And you were able to present some data on whether people are experiencing it solo, if they're with a partner and spouse, with friends, family, or others. And to me personally, I was actually pleasantly surprised that I think it was 15.7 of the hikers were hiking with their partner and spouses, which
that's about right.
Yeah, which was higher than what I was expecting.
Oh,
were you surprised by any of the findings in that survey?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just a quick shout out to Halfway Anywhere, who goes and collects these surveys. I mean, he or she, Halfway Anywhere, has been doing these since I think 2013. He basically sends out the PCT hiker survey to anybody who's willing to take it. And there's just a wealth of information on there, and as the years have progressed, more and more data has become available from these surveys, and it's just gotten more become more streamlined. So that's been a wealth of information for me to understand that trail in particular. But I was I was kind of surprised about that number. I actually thought it was going to be higher. Yeah, I thought it was going to be higher, and I don't know why. I think that's just an assumption I had, right? And just because I hike with my wife, so I thought, oh, therefore, that most people probably want to do that too. But in context, 15% or whatever it was actually I feel like makes a lot of sense intuitively if you think about it. So one, the odds of somebody wanting to do something like the PCT, right, are pretty low. Like, I mean, that's a serious commitment that you're willing to take, right? You have to get some time off work or figure out some other alternate stream of income, or just not do either one of those things and just quit your job or whatever you want to do. So that already takes like a lot of planning, logistics, commitment, all kinds of stuff, right? Mental and physical preparation. And then to think you have to find somebody not only that you want to spend the rest of your life with or spend your time with, they also have to want to hike the PCT. Like, that's pretty crazy if you think about it, like to encounter two people who want to do the same major goal. I feel like with time, thinking about that particular survey question, I think it kind of makes sense, right? But I'm interested to hear that you thought it was going to be lower. Yeah, because I immediately went high for some reason.
I was able to get the data figures. 70.2% of the hikers in the survey were hiking alone. 15.7 were with their partners or spouse. 8.2 were with friends. 4.1 were with family members. And I think for me, I would have thought the opposite of spouses and friends. I guess I was expecting friends to be 15.7 and partner and spouses to be lower at 8.2. So it was a pleasant surprise to see that. And I don't know how many people were surveyed, but it was a substantial amount of hikers that returned the survey results.
Yeah, I think I feel like 2022, I think the sample was, I want to say it's like around 900 hikers, I think. So pretty good. I mean, that's pretty, that's in statistical terms, it's pretty good. So that adds more confidence. That adds just more confidence to those figures. The more people you have responding to these surveys, and hopefully they're being honest about their responses, the better, the more power that these figures provide.
Definitely. And I'm a bit of a data head, so I would definitely love to see if those figures, which way are they trending? Are they trending up? Are they trending down? What's moving? What's not? So it'd be great to be able to see, in the last like 5 years, how the data might have changed.
Oh yeah. I've actually did, I did one a couple weeks ago that was a longitudinal look at base weights over time. One of the survey questions was, what's your base weight? Base weight is basically just your, it's your pack weight minus, minus consumables, fuel and water, I guess. Right. So what was, the data was showing that, 5 years ago, right, people were hiking in, starting the trail, maybe at, I think it was like 20 or 19 pounds of base weight. And then, ending the hike with, more at like 16 pounds, right? So dropping about 4 pounds. And what's interesting to see is the drop off, right? So the difference between the starting weight and the end weight has gotten lower. So I think it was 2015 or something, the drop was 3.8 pounds over the course of the trail. Whereas I think the average for 2022 was like 1.4 or 1.8, somewhere in that range, which is pretty interesting to see. What I initially thought about that was, I think just people are getting, I think ultralight hiking, or backpacking, just getting more popular potentially, right? People are more willing to experience, hiking in that ultralight way. I also think that information is being shared better, so I think that the drop off, there's gear advancements, right? Like obviously gear has gotten lighter and it will always get light. That's just what it seems to be doing, right? But I think that difference, right? So that reduction in difference, it really shows that people are, I think sharing information better and sharing their experiences more than they used to, right? More people have access to, like myself, right? Like I'm sharing, Mike, and you and I are sharing our experiences of hiking and backpacking, right? From all different perspectives. Like you have a different experience than I do, right? And so I think that people are voicing this more. And I think that you see that in that data, in that particular data. I feel like that information absorption is getting better.
I'm glad you brought that post up because I was surprised on how much was dropped by the end of the PCT, because I've had a chance to speak to a few people that are preparing to do the PCT this year. And it seems like they're really dialing in their pack list just to know that they were able to shed 4 pounds, which especially when it comes to ultralight gear is significant amount of gear that they're dropping by the end of it.
Yeah, that's a big drop. I wonder, I don't know. Yeah, I wonder what that is. I wonder if because I know like sleeping bag versus a quilt is a pretty big weight saving there, for example. So I wonder if like, again, as a newer backpacker, right? Like, and seeing just kind of what's out there on social media, on the internet as a whole, it seems like this ultralight way of hiking is getting, popular, or, is a good way to do it. And, well, from what I see, a lot of these ultralight hikers are, using a quilt, for example, instead of a sleeping bag. So I wonder if there's just, I wonder if there's just a better, I really do feel like there's just a better understanding of like common knowledge in that particular space. Like if you look at something like the classic example of like something like Wild, right? Like that book that came out, I think it was in the late 90s when the book came out. I think the main character in that book, is walking around with this like 50+ pound pack, metal frame and stuff, and like that's just the information that was available at that time. Nowadays though, you see people with like all their ultralight gear and stuff, and people are, I think, just starting, people are just getting smarter to that, if that's the way they choose to hike, right? That's not for everybody.
You being a data scientist and me being a bit of a hobbyist when it comes to data and research, what's kind of flashing in my mind would be like, I wonder what if there's a common item that's getting dropped by the end of the trip, and what is that item and why? And I think that's the beauty of data, is like you're presenting these results, and while it gives you a good glimpse of what's occurring, it also brings up some additional questions that like, oh, maybe I want to dig in a little bit more on what
always
specifically.
Always. I mean, like I have to, when I'm coming up with these survey questions, I have to like think about it. I'm like, okay, so if it's a yes or no, for example, in my mind, I always want to ask, if no, then what? Like, why? Like, for example, like a chest strap thing, right? Is like, if no, then like, why do you not wear a chest strap? Like, there's always such a natural progression to gain a better understanding of a particular problem, which is what keeps it interesting and fun, is that you can always just keep poking and prodding it in different ways and expanding it out. And there's so much to learn and so much to, put out there.
I feel like now that people like you and the individual that's been surveying the PCT hikers are collecting this data, I think, within the next couple of years, you'll really see a lot of useful data being available to hikers to kind of prepare for the PCT and some of these other through hikes, or just even day hikes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you asked me earlier about, do I collect data on myself? And the answer is yes, I do. That was actually kind of a process to do. I started, when I kind of started getting serious into PCT data back in November, I wasn't really sure how I should collect my own data, right? Or how detailed do I need to be, and it still is, right? But it was a process of refining, what data collection is for myself. I typically use Gaia GPS to track my hikes and walks, and, even like my training hikes or, my training walks or whatever that I'll take, like I'll track it on Gaia just because, one, it's no effort for me, right? I could just press it on and do my thing, right? But I don't get too detailed into pausing it when I stop. Like I just let it go. And, like in Gaia's case, for example, they're already tracking like when you're moving, when you're not, so like you don't need to be handling all this redundant information and doing all that, and, on top of that, I also keep a log and a journal of my hiking and walking. And I try and keep myself really accountable to going on some form of walk or hike on a daily basis. I just think it's a great way to, I think it's just a good thing to do. I feel good doing it. And I think it's really important, for me at least, right? It's important to record my experiences and tying it to this larger entity, this larger thing. And it kind of helps me feel more purposeful on my, on a day-to-day basis, and connected to a larger picture. A lot of my data science work that I do say at my actual job, right? Because unfortunately, it's not a full-time job for me yet. A lot of the work I do is in a field called natural language processing, which is it's basically how we train computers to speak, right? And to handle text information, right? A great example, easiest example is Google, right? So if you go on Google and start, typing your search, right? There's some very fancy stuff going on in the background that is, guessing what you're going to want, right? It's not just based off of popularity. No, it's actually based off of the language and how you phrase that particular query or search. Because my background is in that, I feel pretty comfortable dealing with large amounts of text information. And, I'm collecting all of this text information through my journal, which I can then kind of pair up with my walking tracks, right? And get to know myself even better. Like, for example, like if, I can pair my journal notes with the weather for that particular day, I can then, match that with my hiking, and then I can, do all sorts of analyses from there. So it's just been this kind of process of learning, of learning what I can do. So I collect all kinds of data on myself, and I'm just kind of still figuring out how it's all going to fit together and just kind of what I can do with it. So, a lot of ideas, there's a lot of ideas circling with that, but, and I have a lot of time to explore those ideas.
Definitely. I mean, the possibilities are endless, especially the more data that you collect, the more you'll be able to kind of see what's going on with not just yourself, but maybe with the hiking community. So the other post, JP, that really caught my attention was the one that showed out of all the PCT hikers surveyed, 0.2% of hikers identified themselves as Hispanic or Latino. I'm a proud Latino hiker, and while this percentage is small in this survey on the PCT, I feel like that's where we'll see another growth spurt within the next 5-10 years of not just Latino hikers, but BIPOC hikers out there as well. Because I'll share with you, when I first started hiking back in 2008, 2009, I didn't really see too many Latino hikers or BIPOC hikers out on the trails. And I think with social media and just making some of these places more accessible or more known, it's definitely brought people out that might have not considered hiking in the past, but they've seen the beauty, the great things that the outdoors can do. So it's bringing people from all walks of life out there.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised by that number. So I am, Latino myself, right? So my father's Mexican. So I'm from California originally, right? So we would go and spend our weekends or some, holiday breaks up in Lake Tahoe, where, we would do some outdoor stuff. But kind of like what I said before, I just wasn't all that into the hiking part. I loved snowboarding, that was like fast and fun, right? But like I never, I didn't really understand the lure of hiking if you can just do it on a snowboard instead. But my dad actually sent, I feel like he set a really good example for my perception of what I thought the, Latino participation in the outdoors was. So he would actually, he would go cross country skiing, and like he would go hiking. He'd do all kinds of stuff outdoors, which was really cool. Yeah. And so when I saw that number, I was, my worldview of that was different than most people. And, the data showed that my worldview was, like I said, was different. So it really surprised me. And I think, I think that it's going to change though. I really do feel that people are going to get out there more, as all of us have just some more time on our hands, and just that these, the benefits of, I hope to be a part of the community that spreads awareness of the benefits of hiking and being in the outdoors. And I think that maybe with the Latino thing, it's a little bit of a cultural thing, I think, as well. Like it's, I feel like a lot of, Latino families have worked so hard to, either to get here or to establish a good life. And, now as generations go by, I feel like there's going to be more opportunities for Latinos and other people of color to be able to just go and enjoy nature as they should.
Oh, definitely. One of the biggest joys that I've had getting into hiking is, seeing some of these amazing places, some of these amazing waterfalls, and then being able to not just take my parents out to them, but my niece, the next generation of hikers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Getting them already immersed in it. And one of my favorite waterfalls in Washington, I got to take my dad to it almost a decade ago. And it was so great to see him kind of act like a kid again, where he was hopping between logs and rocks to try to get underneath the waterfall.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And just to be able to see that and see my niece trying to keep up with him has been great. And being back in the Pacific Northwest over the last 2 years, I've really been able to see more and more Latinos and just people of color out there in the outdoors and enjoying what the Pacific Northwest and what the outdoors have to offer.
Yeah, I get that. I actually, speaking of Cape Falcon from before, I took my dad out there when he came to visit me, and it was just such a great way to show people, what the Pacific Northwest is. It's my favorite way to do it, is to take them out to nature, or to even just to the park. Like that's one of my favorite things about living here, and it's such a great way to really connect with the Pacific Northwest, and so, I totally relate to you there. It's a really great way to just share some time with your family.
And JP, you've gone through a lot of papers, a lot of surveys, a lot of data. What would you say is the one either data or results that you came across that really shocked you or surprised you, if there is any?
Yeah, this one came from me being afraid of animals. Not afraid, but just concerned. learned, right? So I looked into some CDC data a couple of months ago, and I was really curious about, well, just studying the different probabilities of of dying in the wilderness. As morbid as that sounds, I wanted to arm myself with that information and compare it, right? So what I decided to do is I took a sample of it's a CDC Wonder data set, and it has just a bunch of information on different causes of mortality and stuff. So it's a little tough to navigate through. But what I ended up doing is I kind of divided the data up into different categories. So with the help of the CDC's kind of data labeling conventions, but I divided it up into what I think as, urban threats or, like car accidents, assaults, like those kind of, incidents, right? And comparing that versus, falls in the wilderness, weather events in the wilderness, animal attacks, and so forth. And I want to say the likelihood of dying on the way to the trail is like 37 times higher than like all of those different wilderness causes combined. So
Really?
yeah, it's from the larger pool of the United States, right? So there could be some imbalances there in the numbers, but for me that doesn't really matter, right? Because at the end of the day, when I'm sleeping in the woods and I hear something, moving around outside, I feel more confident knowing that it's probably not a bear or something, right?
Yeah.
What I kind of like to tell myself and what helps me kind of calm down on trail actually is, when I'm driving out there, I'm driving to the trail, and once I park, I have decided I'm safe. Right. Because I actually I had a much higher chance of getting in a car accident and dying on my way out to the trail than actually being out in the wilderness. It just gives me that mental edge that I need sometimes when I'm hiking through some brush where, in my mind, I'm thinking about mountain lions or something like that, which I'm absolutely not going to see, but obviously it's important to be, prepared for those kind of situations and arm yourselves with that knowledge. But I guess maybe I took it just like a step further, and just wanted to kind of just do a fun comparison, help me feel more confident out there.
Wow. No, that surprised me. And yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense because there's so many variables just getting to the trailhead that once you get to the trailhead, the likelihood of something catastrophic happening is greatly reduced.
Yeah. So that definitely surprised me just to see that magnitude of difference.
The more data that you've been able to find and collect, is there any upcoming visualizations or reports that you're expecting to review and potentially make into a post in the next couple weeks, if not months?
I mean, like I said before, these surveys have been really exciting. It's just been a really nice way for me to feel more connected with my community and to just help try to quantify some of the questions I have in my head. So that to me is the most exciting because in my mind, I get to drive, the data that I'm getting, right? You can Google all you want, but sometimes there's just data that just isn't out there or it's buried somewhere or whatever, right? But I feel like these surveys are a great way to be able to kind of dictate that data collection and start to create artifacts of data for other people who might be interested in the same problems I am, because, I guarantee you somebody else is. And, so being able to contribute to this, to this community that's given me so much in the way that I can has just been super exciting. So yeah, those surveys, I really appreciate anybody who answers those and takes the time out of their day. It doesn't go unnoticed. And it just gives me that fuel to keep on doing this.
No, I'm looking forward to, what you're going to be posting next. And I'm hoping the listeners can get a chance to follow you and participate in the survey so you get a deeper data pool to pull from. Now, switching back to hiking, I don't know if you've experienced this or if you've developed this, but I feel like some people have a summit ritual or end of the hike routine. It's not something that happens every single hike, but maybe it's a favorite snack that they take. Maybe it's a meal, some sort of drink, or even just a moment of zen. Do you have a regular hiking routine or ritual that you do when you reach your destination?
Well, I kind of talked on one, right? When I go out to Salmon River or Mount Hood, I'll grab a breakfast burrito, right? But, and I pretty much always grab coffee on the way out to the trail. I love that. I love coffee. So, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer for me, but I don't really have an on-trail ritual per se. I have found that, no two hikes of mine have ever been the same. And I feel like that's something to, to be, not to be respected, right? But that's just the way that I've been experiencing this. So I definitely don't have something I do on the trail. It really does vary day by day, but I definitely have something I do when I get back home. And that is I get some Epsom salts and take a bath. It is just the best, especially after a rainy hike. Oh my God, getting into a hot bath with some, some Epsom salts and some other good smelling stuff is just the perfect way to take care of yourself. And beyond that, really, I find that just that you just feel so good when you're done hiking or like going, backpacking. It's just like it's such a great time to really take care of yourself when you're feeling so positive and so energized in that, and only that way that I feel like hiking can really do. I'll just really just take care of myself when I get back and just really appreciate everything. Either maybe I'll start a fire in the fireplace or, order in something nice and just hang out at the house and take care.
So JP, I imagine with the data that you're collecting and seeing that your pack list and what you're packing's evolving with the information that you're getting right now, currently, right. What would you consider to be your most valuable piece of hiking gear that you take?
Yeah, so I guess the cheesy answer would be my knowledge, right? So like I said before, I feel better out on the trail, especially by myself. I just kind of got into solo hiking myself. I've never really done that before. Ever since the last couple of months, I've been doing that mostly solo hiking. So feeling confident is everything out there for me right now. It's what keeps you calm and keeps you, enjoying the experience and not being, distracted by irrational fear or whatnot. So that's one answer, right? But more fun answer, I guess, right? My footwear is so important. I'll call them, bad feet. I have bad feet, and having the right footwear is critical to my enjoyment out there. If I start feeling my arches or my ankles start nagging at me, then it just takes me away, right? But it's just all a learning process. Sometimes that's either the footwear, and sometimes that actually is my body just telling me to slow down and get more external and not be so internal. Definitely my shoes. Shoes are very important to me.
And JP, you've talked about being able to control not necessarily the anxiety, but the thoughts of wildlife encounters and things that could happen on the trail. Have you had an experience that's been a close call, whether, almost getting lost or getting lost and then finding your way out, or a wildlife encounter?
Yeah. So I haven't had either of those two. So luckily I haven't had either of those, feeling lost, or encountering an animal. What I have definitely encountered, though, was more of like a force of nature type thing. A couple of months ago, my wife and I wanted to go to Forest Park, which again is that, large urban forest that's here in Portland. So, it's a pretty casual thing to go just do because it's, it's like in the city. I mean, it's literally part of Portland still, even though it's this large forest. And so it was a good lesson in preparation, right? Even if it's just like a little, casual hike that you're used to is, make sure you look ahead because we didn't, right? And it ended up, there ended up being a wind advisory that we didn't, feel until we were out there. And I mean, I was so surprised with how crazy the winds, just started picking up. So, my wife and I were just hiking along and we just kind of started feeling a little uncomfortable, just kind of started feeling like, oh, okay, we're in a situation now where like things are a little bit out of our control. Well, no, they are definitely out of our control. There's limbs are falling down, wind is going crazy, and we're actually like, we just hit like the steepest part of our hike because we were trying to get back to the car quickly. And so we picked up the pace and all of a sudden I just hear this loud noise, and about 4 to 6 feet in front of my wife, there's this massive branch that just fell down from one of these, one of these large trees. And it was by far the scariest. It was a crazy mix of emotions I felt. Obviously I was on edge and nervous and scared about what was going on and how close of a call it was to my wife. And, I just felt like I wasn't able to do it. I couldn't do anything about it. And, but at the same time, I was so grateful, right, for not being just that tiny bit faster, or whatever, or, anything like that could have been catastrophic. And so I'll never forget that. And never, that lesson is in my mind, prepare, look at the weather. Even if the forecast is clear, just expect the worst for you. Like that makes me uncomfortable, right? Naturally, that makes me uncomfortable. So I'm going to prepare for that now. That impact, like weather impacts me more than maybe somebody who hasn't gone through that kind of experience. I mean, obviously I'm just really thankful that everything's okay, but that was by far like the scariest moment I've had so far on trail. And I expect more, and that's honestly, that's part of the thing that attracts me to this. It's not that I'm a danger junkie, but I feel like those moments just give you perspective, and they make things better. I was much happier at home that night after that, and just much more connected with my wife, and that's kind of what you sign up for, I guess, right? And that's what I feel like gives it its kind of its beauty.
I feel like, Washington, Oregon, they get their windstorms, but Oregon windstorms are, I feel like, on another level.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it because, I mean, you're in the woods. There's trees, and like it's such a feeling of no control because, because like with an animal, for example, like, yeah, it's a wild animal, right? But there's precautions you can take, there's certain things you can do if you encounter, right? Like, there's, you handle black bear differently than, grizzly bear and so forth, right? There's things that do put some control into your corp, but something about, weather is just scary, right? There's no control over that other than the best preparation you can.
JP, being new to the hiking community, I feel like you got a good perspective on, your first couple years of hiking. For those that are interested in going out and enjoying the outdoors, do you have any tips or advice for first-time hikers?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So I think one, I think hiking is I think from the outside, you don't really see how much of a community hiking actually is. I was very surprised by that when I first started getting serious into this. My number one advice would be find somebody who enjoys hiking, because most people do. Most people do enjoy hiking, right? And find somebody who has some experience and just go with them, right? And keep it simple if that's what you want to do, right? And really, really have somebody there to help you out and understand your goals of a hike, right? So I feel like it's very possible that people go out there with folks who are super experienced and may push somebody a little bit too hard. So I think it's really important to find somebody that you're comfortable with, that understands, your particular goal for that hike or even a backpacking trip, right? So I think that's crucial, right? And also, I find that just calling a ranger station, I don't know why, I feel like that's just like such an overlooked method of getting information on a hike. Like I've been saying over and over again, there's so much information out there. Say you Google a trail, you're going to find something on AllTrails, you're going to find something on Hiking Project, you're going to find something on Gaia, you're going to find whatever, all these local little forums and stuff. And that can be super overwhelming for a new hiker. It's overwhelming for me, and like, I sometimes it's just like, what, I need to talk to somebody who is an expert in that land, right? I feel confident in calling up a ranger and asking the questions that I might have, or just getting a feel for it, like this past weekend, I called, calling ahead to the Cottonwood Canyon State Park Ranger Station, it just armed me with more confidence and knowing that everything was going to be all right. I wasn't the chances of running into something unexpected were fairly low. And I was able to ask the questions that pertain to me very specifically to an expert in that area. That's a very overlooked thing, is just calling, I guess old fashioned, right? Call the ranger station and just get an expert opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip, because I feel like technology definitely provides a lot of information to help you have a safe and rewarding experience. But especially the rangers that are out there doing trail maintenance or even just checking the trailheads, they have such a wealth of knowledge. And very recently, because sometimes you might see a trail report that's 6 weeks old or even months old, and being able to ask somebody that's been seeing it more frequently is really great. And this is a little secret, but I think people should know, is a lot of the times rangers will kind of give you some hidden gems, like, if you're going here, maybe check out over here, because there's something really special and unique maybe a mile down the trail that's worth checking out. And
that's just something you just can't get that from Googling, or it's going to be harder to get to that. Even just a couple of weeks ago, I was doing Salmon River, right? Pretty common trail for me, as you probably gathered, and I called ahead, even though I'm super familiar with this trail. I called ahead because kind of who knows what the weather's like up there, so close to the mountain. And I called, and the ranger told me, there's the road to get in is snowed out, right? And like you have to start the hike 3 miles before. And I was equipped with that knowledge, right? Now it's not going to stop me, but now I have this information that I can now go out there and handle the environment more appropriately. So, on the way out there was a group of people who actually got stuck on the road out to the trailhead because, no fault to them, right? I mean, really no fault to anybody. It's just the information that was out there at the time just wasn't present enough. It wasn't current enough. And whereas the ranger was able to tell me a report from somebody who had just worked on the road there the morning of, so I had a great picture of, what was lying ahead just by, calling up somebody who was more than happy to talk about it, by the way.
Oh, solid tip, JP. That's, like you said, it's very underlooked and sometimes underutilized, but definitely use the rangers. They're the ones out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're in spring. This episode's going to come out in June. Do you have any upcoming goals for 2023 and maybe beyond?
Yes. So I don't know if you caught it, I used the term government sanctioned backpacking trip. So this last weekend, like I said, I went out to John Day and did my first, I would say, real backpacking trip. And I say that because really my first ever trip, right? My first ever backpacking trip was I was 11 or 12 years old or something at summer camp. And I did not like it. There was, I remember having like a big old metal frame pack or a kid-sized version of that, having to drink iodine, water treated with iodine. And I was just like, oh, this is terrible, and, just didn't understand it. Right. And I didn't understand it. And so this was up kind of in, up near Tahoe as well. So over in California. So, in the Sierras. And, I remember just, we didn't sleep in a tent. It was just like a group of, it was like 20 or so kids at the summer camp. And I remember so clearly, being able to look up at the stars and I had no idea that it could be like that. I didn't understand that, the sky could look like that. But, time went on. I joined the military, like I said, and one of the things about the military is you actually do a lot of marching, and I'm a quote backpacking, right? So my only real experience in this kind of backcountry-ish camping is through the Army. Which is a completely different experience than backpacking for fun, right? It's actually kind of the opposite. So rather than taking your time and enjoying a trail, it's hey, put your head down on this concrete, and march on, right? That's how I hurt my feet, right? Is through these bad practices of moving under load. And so, I'd spent some time doing a couple camping, as part of our boot camp, for example, you have to pass, you have to spend a certain amount of nights out in a training environment where you're simulating a training exercise. And, that involves sleeping out in these little personal backpacking tents that the Army issues you, and sleeping in a sleeping bag that is way too big and doesn't insulate heat very well, because it doesn't fit your body, dealing with it that way. So, I didn't really know that camping and hiking and backpacking and all these things were supposed to be like enjoyable. I thought there was a certain element of hardship that's required, right? And this journey of backpacking has just been such a great way for me to deal with that, and deal with treating myself better, and putting myself first sometimes, because the Army doesn't let you do that, right? The Army is it's the Army, like you're a team. You do things as a group. My goal really for this year is just to have fun backpacking and actually get out there, be more confident, do things on my own terms, with my wife, and getting out there with her. And, she's new on this journey with me as well, which has just been an even better experience, is to have somebody that, that I share my life with, to be able to share this journey with. So it's just been awesome. And so really just, getting out some overnights would be awesome. Just doing a bunch of overnights, as many as possible. I don't need to plan this massive excursion. We're so close to all these backpacking trails or whatever, that's so easy to just go and, do an overnight with your, I leave my pack, semi-packed all the time, so I can just have that option. So, but as far as big trails are concerned, or bigger trails for me, we want to do the Timberline Trail really bad this year. That for us is going to be like our first big trip. We're actually planning on a little overnight somewhere. We haven't decided where for this upcoming weekend, which will be great. It's going to be my wife's first backpacking trip, and I'm really excited to share this feeling that I have now after my trip with her, because it's just been such a eye opener for me. It's just been like an amazing experience, and so I can't wait to do that. Just exploring this amazing region this year is the goal. And obviously that Timberline Trail, come on, I want to do that. As beyond though, PCT data is called PCT data for a reason. I have felt this bug to do the PCT, and that's really what kind of started this whole thing. I wanted to commit myself and, to something large. And, I find that, I think that this is the way that I have to do this. And it's something I want to do so bad. And living away from the West Coast makes you realize how much you love the West Coast. And that's not to downplay anywhere else. It's just that I spent, 6 years or so away from where I'm from. And I didn't realize what I was missing at the time. I wasn't really into hiking in the outdoors when I was over here, and being away from it really makes you understand how important the environment is for your well-being. I guess I just never understood that being around evergreens is very helpful for me. It makes me feel good. It's just I feel like the PCT, for example, it's just a way for me to solidify that kind of bond that I have with the West. And not only that, and challenge myself and just just take the time to do something that I love with somebody that I love for a very long time. You know what I mean? So I don't know when that would be. I'm not in any rush. That's, what I'm learning about all this is that nothing has to be a rush when it comes to hiking. And I have no deadline that I'm setting. I'm just kind of doing it. We're going to do it when we do it, and
Exactly.
just having fun. Yeah, and having fun with it along the way. I mean, it's training for the PCT is actually fun. Guess what? Because you get to hike and go backpacking, so I'll take my time. It's okay.
Oh, you got some goals this year, and that's only going to help, prepare you for your goals in the future. And like you said, there's so much to do here. I thought I hiked a lot before I left to Hawaii, but, I barely scratched the surface of what Washington has to offer. And, even Oregon being so close to me, like there's just so much to do. And, then you can travel and that just opens up endless possibilities. So, I think hiking is one of those things that it's a lifelong journey.
And I think I'm starting to pick up on that as well. And I'm starting to love that about it.
This was awesome to be able to speak with you, and it was really
thank
awesome
you so much.
to hear the process that you're developing, and I'm hoping to be able to get some more people to submit your surveys. But that'd be great. This next section of the podcast is the this or that questions, 2 hiking related topics, and basically you just choose the one that you gravitate towards the most.
Okay.
All set?
Got it. Yeah.
Here we go. Ascending or descending?
Oh, ascending.
And how about waterfalls or summits?
I'll go waterfalls.
Switchbacks or straight up?
Switchback.
And trek poles or freehand?
Well, okay, this is tricky because I'm freehand right now. However, I want to get into trekking poles. So I think my heart is actually trekking poles because there's kind of no reason I feel like to use them.
And I think I know the answer to this one, but do you fuel up before a hike or do you fill up after?
I mean, both. Both during and after, I guess. I'm actually a pretty small frame, but I put it down. So I would say before and after.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about, do you bushwhack or go around?
Oh, I mean, I'd go around probably. Yeah.
And how about, do you jump in or do you stay dry?
I'll jump in. I quit trying stuff. Yeah.
And how about sunsets or sunrises?
Sunrises. Just because they take a little more effort, I feel like. I'm not a morning person. 6 years of the Army does not make you a morning person. So I feel like the extra work to get to sunrise is a little bit more worth it for me.
Okay. And how about spring flowers or fall colors?
I mean, I haven't experienced the spring flowers in hiking, but I'm going to go fall colors. That's such a great time of year.
Okay. Do you tag a hike or do you not tag a hike?
Sometimes. Sometimes I tag it in I'll tag it. Sometimes. Okay. Not every time, though.
That was it for the this or that questions, JP. Thanks again for coming on. If listeners want to follow you and see some of the great data that you're putting together, what's the best place or places online that they can follow your journey and what you're doing? Instagram is probably the best one. That's my favorite outlet, I think, so far. So that's just PCT data. But I also run a blog. So there's also a PCT data blog that kind of goes on in the background. It's a little quieter, but that's at pct-data.com. There's a bit of a connection between the Instagram stuff and that. I talk about, some of the plots that I put out. I actually go a little bit more in detail about why maybe I created that plot at that time. And I also have some other kind of little random articles on there of, just what I've been learning about. There's no super structure with it yet. Again, it's just all evolving. So if you're really interested in getting a deeper understanding of where I'm coming from, the blog is definitely the place to do that. So that's pct-data.com. Yeah, we'll definitely put links to your Instagram and your blog on the episode show notes so people can check it out. Great. Yeah, JP, this was really fun, really great speaking with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing your journey over the next couple months and years as you progress in the hiking. Appreciate you coming on. Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of let myself speak and hopefully get, have people get to know me a little bit better. This is the first time I've done something like this. I never thought I'd be on a podcast before. I was very shy growing up. So this is quite different for me. So I'm really, really grateful to have this opportunity to just kind of open the doors a little bit. Thank you once again to Juan Pablo for joining us on this episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at pct.data to keep up with their latest adventures and see some of his most recent data posts on hiking. We'll be putting out new episodes every week throughout the spring. Please be sure to like and subscribe to not miss out on those. Also follow us on Instagram at Hikes and Mikes. Catch you on the next one. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Flip Socks. Whether you're on the trail, on the job, or in the yard, Flip Socks will keep Mother Nature out of your boots with their innovative nylon sleeve. You no longer need to worry about any annoying debris getting trapped in your boots during your hikes. Simply flip down the nylon sleeve over any boot to prevent Mother Nature from finding its way inside, keeping your feet comfortable all day long. To get your first pair, visit flipsockswithaz.com and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for listeners who use the promo code at checkout, I'll be donating 100% of the Season 2 promo code proceeds to Big City Mountaineers, who provide transformative experiences through connections to nature that strengthen life skills and build community for youth in disinvested communities across the nation. So if you're tired of bits and pieces of the trail finding its way into your hiking boots, pick up a pair of Flip Socks today with the promo code HikesMikes10 to get 10% off. For website and promo code, see the episode description.